Welcome to the Spotlight Roundup, presented to you by Psychedelic Spotlight, your number one source for news, information, and unique perspectives surrounding the emerging sector of medicinal psychedelics. I'm Autumn Tribbitt, and it's the week of May 10th, 2021. In this week's episode, we spotlight MindMed's uplisting to the Nasdaq, ketamine therapy shows benefits in treating depression related to childhood abuse, Atai Life Sciences looks to raise $100 million in an initial public offering, and more. Now, let's get to your roundup. On April 27th, MindMed Inc., a leading psychedelic medicine biotech company, completed its uplisting to the Nasdaq. Trading under the ticker symbol MNMD, MindMed is now the second psychedelic-related company to uplist to the Nasdaq, joining Compass Pathways, who went public last September. The New York-based company is currently focused on developing psychedelic medicines and therapies aimed at addiction and mental health issues, and recently partnered with NYU, contributing $5 million to develop a psychedelic research and training program. The company, which raised $24.2 million before going public on the Canadian Neo Exchange, has assembled a broad and impressive list of investors over the past several months, which is perhaps highlighted by Shark Tank star Kevin O'Leary, who was a part of a $6 million early funding round in 2019. Next, results from a recent study involving 189 adults with treatment-resistant depression and who reported having been abused or neglected as children demonstrated greater decreases in their depression severity following at least 3 ketamine infusions that were administered throughout the study. The results of the study were shared as a part of a poster presentation and discussion at the recent Anxiety and Depression Association of America 2021 virtual conference. Researchers assessed each participant's childhood maltreatment history using the Childhood Trauma Questionnaire, as well as their depression severity using the Quick Inventory of Depression Symptomatology Self-Report, both before and after the ketamine sessions. After comparing the before and after questionnaires, researchers found that participants with a greater history of childhood maltreatment, including sexual abuse, physical neglect, emotional abuse, and emotional neglect, reported greater decreases in depression severity.
What I'm seeing clinically with people who've had significant childhood trauma or adverse events in childhood is that there are parts of us that get frozen in time by traumas when we're very young, and these parts go underground into the unconscious realm until we find a place that is stable and solid enough for these parts to come up and be reintegrated. And so one of the wonderful things about ketamine is because it's a dissociative anesthetic, it allows kind of a separation from the body to unearth that which is still waiting for excavation in the unconscious mind. And so what I see is these young parts, these childlike parts of our psyche or our unconscious that have been frozen in time, that are sometimes not accessible through traditional talk therapy, can soften and come up for air. And that's where I think the real healing and integration can happen.
Atai Life Sciences, a biopharmaceutical company aiming to make psychedelic drugs to treat mental health disorders, announced its plans to raise $100 million in an initial public offering. The Berlin-headquartered company, which counts billionaire investor Peter Thiel as one of its main backers, submitted an S-1 filing to the Securities and Exchange Commission earlier this month. And according to the filing, Atai has already raised an aggregate of $362.3 million from private investors so far, including the Conscious Fund, a venture capital fund focused on early-stage psychedelic-based companies. Here's what Conscious Fund co-founder Henri Sant-Cassia had to say about Atai's forthcoming IPO.
For us as a fund, I think Atai are the slickest, most analogous company to a pharmaceutical venture. They are by far the largest entity in the sector. It is extremely well managed, and in terms of potential, they have 11 drugs currently under development. They're also major shareholders in Compass Pathways, which you could regard as their kind of trial effort with public markets plays. And we see this really as the transformative public listing in the market. It's very much attracting the big institutional money. They've got some famous investors like Peter Thiel, Mike Novogratz in the mix. And we see Atai as an example of the mainstreaming of psychedelics. I also think personally they could be an outlier like Tesla, and could potentially grow to the size of, an existing pharmaceutical company, and instead of being acquired at a later stage, actually stand on their own as a giant of the medical industry globally.
The company, which has roughly 50 staff and offices across Berlin, New York, and San Diego, is currently partnered with 14 companies focusing on drug development and other technologies, and plans to sell its shares on the Nasdaq under the symbol ATAI. And finally, as they look to further their study and research involving psychedelics, the Center for Psychedelic and Consciousness Research at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore recently announced they are actively enrolling participants to study the potential antidepressant effects of psilocybin in people with newly diagnosed mild cognitive impairment of early Alzheimer's disease. During the study, researchers at the university plan to administer 2 doses of psilocybin and offer supportive counseling during the 8-week study. During that time and for 6 months after treatment, they will measure mood, quality of life, anxiety, and markers for inflammation which can correlate with depression. The team will also assess memory and cognitive function to see if the promising findings in animal studies will translate to humans. To learn more about the study and enrollment requirements, please visit hopkinspsychedelic.org. And that's it for this week's Spotlight Roundup, presented to you by Psychedelic Spotlight, your #1 source for news, information, and unique perspective surrounding the emerging sector of medicinal psychedelics. For more on the stories covered here, visit psychedelicspotlight.com. And be sure to check out the Psychedelic Spotlight podcast, where Global Track Solutions' David Flores and Jill Ettinger interview luminaries across the field of psychedelics and related industries. Subscribe at Apple Podcasts or wherever you stream. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Autumn Trivett. Be well.